Wildcard weekend is here. We're previewing and making picks for the weekend's wildcard opening round of playoff games. Belichick out in New England, Jerod Mayo in. Washington Commanders have a new GM as the coaching carousel spins. All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love all the everydayers out there. Make sure you are subscribed. We appreciate it on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. A lot to get into today. This episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. All right, so a couple of unexpected ones, some expected ones, and a quarter of the league needs new head coaches now, Matt.
Yeah.
The big one was since we've last recorded, Bill Belichick, no longer the head coach of the New England Patriots. Jerod Mayo, former linebackers coach, former Patriots player, steps in as the new head coach there, trying to continue the Patriot way. Pete Carroll out in Seattle. Adam Peters hired as the new Washington general manager. So tons to start with. We got to go to New England first, though. Jerod Mayo. You know what's fascinating? Jerod Mayo was drafted in 2008 by the Patriots.
Yeah.
And there are now two head coaches in the league from that Patriots draft class because Kevin O'Connell was drafted the same.
Wow, that's interesting.
And looking around at Mike Vrabel, who's been fired but had some success in the NFL, Patriots players have kind of made better coaches than Patriots coaches under Belichick that have gotten jobs.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that way of thinking, but that's great. Maybe, I mean, the day in the life of a player in a building is much different than the day in the life of a coach. You know, I mean, you're behind the scenes and you're in all those coaches' meetings, and maybe it's a lot easier to replicate as opposed to seeing what the coaches want to show you, you know, and how to play and what you're adjusting during the games and what worked for you as a player. So maybe that is the Belichick, tree angle, interesting.
It's hard to know what to expect from Jerod Mayo. Well respected in the building, but he wasn't on any of the lists of other teams that were requesting to interview coaches either. So this is like a really in-house incubated coaching candidate in Jerod Mayo. So obviously it's going to be fascinating to see how this turns out in New England.
The little I've heard, and again, I always hate commenting on assistant coaches because I don't know the men and you don't know what they do during the week or how he coached his linebackers or, I mean, coordinators are hard enough, let alone, just assistant coaches. But he must have gotten Belichick's seal of approval. Must have,
it sounds like that's what it was. It was almost agreed upon as Belichick left. He's like, well, then this is the next guy is Jerod Mayo. Mm-hmm. So totally in-house.
So I think all of that whole process was probably more cordial than some of us might have thought. I've heard Mayo can be a little prickly. I hear that he's also a very, very good and respectable defensive mind. Kind of sounds like his predecessor a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
All those things. Yep.
Yeah. Younger, so let's give it a shot.
And maybe able to connect with the younger players more than Bill has recently. Yeah. And there was a quote from Jerod Mayo talking about his coaching style. And he said, you can't really get on a player, tough love, until you get their respect first and show them the love. Then you show them the toughness, because then you have that relationship with the player and then you can get in to him. Right. And he said back in the day when he was playing, you just did what the coach said, and that was it. And now, and we've heard this from Sean McVay in that recent podcast, The Play Callers. And it's interesting to hear Jerod Mayo say the same thing. And these two guys have never coached together or, in the same organization together. But Sean McVay said the new player wants to know the why they're doing something, not just do this.
Yes, sir.
They want to know why, and they want to have buy-in, right? And Sean McVay says that's fine because I love explaining the why, because it's all about the why. I want them to know the why because it'll help them be a better player. And Jerod Mayo said a similar thing. Back in the day, you just did what the coach said, and that's it. And now players want to know the why. So maybe there's a bridge now between you're prickly, you're going to be an old school, hard-ass coach, defensive mind, but you're going to give players the why a little bit more and be more in tune with the younger new generation of players out there. So we'll see how that turns out for Jerod Mayo. But man, I mean, those shoes to fill, anybody coming into this role, it was going to be tough because you're going to be compared to a guy who has 8 Lombardis.
Yeah, and you're taking over a team that doesn't have any offensive talent, but at least the strength of the team, the defense, you would hope is keeping the course. I mean, that's a really good unit on that side of the ball. And I think it goes without saying that now you'll have a little more divide between front office, GM, however that works out, and coach. Like I'm sure Mayo's not going to be buying all the groceries either,
And all Belichick's children, are they staying on the staff? It sounds like probably a lot.
You mean his real children? Yeah, right.
Does he take his kids with him elsewhere when he gets another job? Where do you see Bill going?
I think Atlanta's the best fit, but I could see Washington as well. The thing is, if you hire Belichick, and it doesn't look like Carroll's going anywhere, but he'd be the same thing. How long can you conceivably think you're going to have this guy? I mean, it's not going to be Steelers 3 coaches in my lifetime situation where they're there for decades,
And like the built-in replacement plan, well, that already happened in New England. So
yeah.
Like, if you hire Bill, you have to have a new replacement plan, kind of. And it might be the same way for Pete Carroll. Speaking of Pete Carroll, because we haven't had a chance to talk about this either, because after we recorded we had to record a couple podcasts Wednesday. We didn't record one yesterday, so we missed some of the breaking news. And the Pete Carroll news happened right after we finished recording. I actually and Pete at his press conference like, I'm jacked up. I don't know what's next, but I'm still jacked up. So he has some energy left. Are either one of those coaches even going to coach? I could totally see them coaching this next year. If you take a year off and all of a sudden you're a little older, now you're 73 instead of 72, and maybe you get closer to retirement. But
I can't see either one at that age taking a year off and then coming back.
Yeah, exactly. I feel the same.
Right. You better do it now,
they're both football lifers. So my money's on them having jobs. What about the Commanders for Pete Carroll? He's California born and raised. He's coached.
Bringing energy to the building.
California, bring energy to that situation, has a quarterback. And speaking of quarterbacks, Jerod Mayo, they've got the 3rd pick in New England. They've got to figure things out on offense, or Jerod Mayo's job's not going to last long. You mentioned Washington. They have the number 2 pick in the draft. Adam Peters, 49ers assistant GM, hired there.
Okay.
More on that in a little bit and what that could mean for Washington's plan. But generally, you either hire a coach first and he's in charge of everything and has final say and brings in a GM with him, or you hire a GM first who then searches and hires a coach, which to me says Washington is probably out on Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
GM first.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You would think if you're going to land a whale, you would land the whale first before the GM, most likely. And then he would help you go get his GM. That makes sense. Maybe it'd be out on Carroll too. The option, I just want to throw one thing out there, is that the option that Carroll has that Belichick doesn't is Carroll's still a Seahawk employee. He's an advisor, or he's getting a big check every week,
That's
still.
Weird. So is he going to stick around just until they get a head coach and then say, okay, peace out? Or is he just going to stay an advisor? Because if you're an advisor for one team, you can't coach another team, right? So there's teams are going to want a head coach, right? Like Washington is going to try to hire a coach as soon as possible. They got their GM, they're working on it, so they're not going to say, oh, cool, hey, Pete, get back to us in a month. That's not how that's going to operate. So if Pete's going to stick around for a while in Seattle, that tells me he's done, because we just said that if he takes a year off, he probably won't come back. And if you hang out for a month or 2 months, then you're not going to get a head coaching job in this cycle.
It does sound like it's Dan Quinn's job to lose in Seattle as well, which is kind of like the Mayo hiring. I mean, in some way, it's super familiar, and it'd be almost more, could be under the same roof.
It'd be almost more like if Vrabel went back to New England, right? Like you kind of leave, sow your oats, then come back home. And where does this leave Vrabel? Because we all assumed wrongly that if Belichick left New England, Mike Vrabel would get that job.
Yeah.
And now we know he's not. So a little bit more on that next. More on this coaching carousel. New GM in Washington. I have some thoughts there, having covered the 49ers for the entirety of Adam Peters' assistant GM stay there. And we've got to make some picks. Wild card
Playoff
weekend,
weekend.
Saturday, Sunday, playoff games coming up. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all of the NFL games, sporting events, music, comedy, theater events, any ticketed event near you. Just about. You can find it on Gametime. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You see the view from your seat before you buy. You know exactly what to expect when you arrive at your event. All-in prices. This is my favorite part. I hate the hidden fees. You think you have a ticket price, you go to checkout, and boom, your ticket's doubled. All-in prices show your total upfront at Gametime, so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. Buying tickets in seconds, couple of taps on the app. The tickets are right there on the Gametime app, so you don't have to go fishing through your email to find those tickets when you do arrive at your event. Gametime has tickets right up to the start of the event too, so it's the place for last-minute tickets. Even an hour after event starts, you can find those tickets, the last-minute seats at Gametime. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. A whirlwind of information here. Jerod Mayo, the head coach in New England. That means Vrabel's not the head coach in New England. So Vrabel's still out there. There's 7 jobs that are open. The Seahawks job is open. The Atlanta Falcons job is open. Bill Belichick's still out there. Pete Carroll. Are they going to continue coaching? What's next for those guys? We haven't really heard any official interviews for those 2 coaches, but we've heard a lot of interviews for a lot of other coaches in a lot of other jobs. And now the Washington Commanders are going to post haste figure out who their next head coach is, because they have hired the first GM in this cycle, and that is former 49ers assistant GM Adam Peters. And he was a scout that actually came up under Belichick in New England, then was and you know he has rings from his tenure there. He has a connection to the Denver Broncos before he was with the 49ers organization, and now this new look, new ownership, new GM, new organization really in Washington is fascinating to me, because we're now in a time and place where the Washington Commanders might be run really well, Matt, and that hasn't been the case in recent history. So it's fascinating to see how this all shakes out there and who ends up the head coach. One thing I do know that Adam Peters can bring is a collaborative mindset. And we kind of mentioned how, you hire the GM first, usually he's in charge. So I'm guessing Peters is going to have roster control whenever he hires his head coach. But in San Francisco, it was the opposite. It was the head coach has the 53-man roster final say in Kyle Shanahan, and he brought along his GM in John Lynch. But John Lynch has done such a great job of getting Kyle the pieces he wants, and sometimes even making bad trade-ups. But they figured it out, and they really worked well together. The 49ers had done an amazing job of drafting late-round picks. I mean, stars and starters in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. That's hard to replicate. So on one hand, okay, the process we can try to replicate, but are you just going to start just drafting superstar players on day 3 of the draft? I mean, that's a hard ask too if you're trying to replicate what the 49ers did. So but Peters was the scouting director, right? That's where he came up in the scouting. So if you're pointing to one guy who had a big part of drafting amazing on day 3, Adam Peters is your guy.
Yeah, and I feel like you started the segment by saying this. Washington looks like they're doing it right. I mean, if they hit on that quarterback at 2, hit on a coach. I mean, I know that's easier said than done, and those things aren't slam dunks. And this guy comes from an organization that makes a lot of sense, and ownership seems to certainly have a plan, and they've owned teams before and took over a terrible Sixers team, from what I understand, and built that thing in a first-class manner, the best I know of. I don't really know the NBA world all that well. But you could see Washington kind of being where Houston is right now, even a year or two from now. You know what I mean? Like trending up.
And it's not going to be a rush if we've learned from Josh Harris ownership and the way that the trust the process, Philadelphia 76ers, they're not going to be in a rush. They're going to try to build this thing foundationally from the ground up in Washington. So we'll see how that ends up looking there.
I'd be optimistic, though, if I was a Commander fan.
Yeah, I would too. I think we've hit all the latest news, right, Matt? I mean,
I think so. The big stuff, yeah.
There's going to be tons more mixed in with playoff games here, and we'll get to a lot of it Monday. But it's time to preview and make picks here for these Saturday and Sunday football games. And we'll start with the AFC because it's all AFC on Saturday, and it is the Joe Flacco-led Browns at the CJ Stroud-led Houston Texans, and it is the Cleveland Browns favored by 2 points on the road at the Houston Texans.
This might be my hardest pick because in some ways I trust the Browns more, basically for the main reason that rookie coach and quarterback in Houston scares me. Browns defense is awesome, but it's much worse on the road. And that doesn't mean it's bad, but it's unbelievable at home. It's good on the road. Flacco scares me, though. I mean, I just said the rookie quarterback thing. I trust Stroud more than I trust Flacco. And as well as Flacco's playing, he still takes a ton of sacks, a lot of turnover-worthy plays that I think he's gotten kind of lucky. But I think the Browns win this game, and I will give up the 2 points.
Yeah, see,
it's a tough one for me.
I really wanted to go the home dog here, but CJ Stroud in his first playoff game, Joe Flacco's battle test. Say what you want about Joe Flacco, but he's won a Super Bowl. He's been through playoffs. He's been through life experiences that CJ Stroud just hasn't quite yet. And that defense is really the key to me. And Jim Schwartz has an unbelievable record against Kyle Shanahan offenses too.
I didn't know that.
And I think that is the angle that really sells this one for me, because I think it could potentially be a long day. I want to take the home dog so bad, but it's only 2 points, and I do think the Browns are going to come out ahead here. So Browns by a field goal on the road at the Texans.
Little much more rested as well. I mean, they didn't play anyway last week.
Yeah, and the Texans essentially played a playoff game. So,
exactly.
That might have been, okay, that we did it. We got over that first hump. New regime. You're still feeling great about the Houston Texans, even if they're one and done in the playoffs.
Oh, no doubt. This is all house money. There, no question about that.
And if Myles Garrett's living in CJ Stroud's face, that's just it's going to be a tough day for you.
They're going to throw a lot at Stroud.
We're talking about wind chill of negative 30 degrees in Kansas City. It's like I'm looking at 1 degree right now in Kansas City. This is
the Buffalo game are bonkers with weather.
And it's the worst possible team to have to go play in that. The team from Miami, right? The Miami Dolphins. They're so good at home, not as good on the road. They are 4-4 away this season, and now the Chiefs haven't been great at home. Usually they're awesome at home. They've only been 5-4. But does this not help the Chiefs that much because their strength is their quarterback? Does the cold hurt the passing game? The Dolphins are a better running team. So maybe this doesn't hurt the Dolphins that bad. I don't know. But the Kansas City Chiefs are favored by 5 for a reason. But I kind of want to take the road team that think that in the cold they can still run the football. Am I crazy, man?
No, because, I mean, they're from Miami. They can't handle the cold. Tua's from Hawaii. You can't handle the cold. We played at Bama. Maybe, but you can't tell me anyone's going to be comfortable in minus 20. You know what I mean? It's not like Chris Jones is like, oh, cool, I do this all the time. Like no one's going to be comfortable. I mean, you can't tell.
In Texas,
right.
Grew up as like, oh, this is great. I'm gonna go shirtless in warmups because I'm used to negative 30 wind chill.
I mean, unless you grew up in the Arctic Circle, I mean, I mean, I don't want to. I mean, if you grew up in Vancouver, this is still bonkers. I mean, like this is really, really cold, borderline dangerous. No one's going to be comfortable. So I do, yeah. I guess the weather favors the Chiefs, but I also we'll talk Bills Steelers in a minute. But I don't think wind and those things are nearly as bad in this one. But the temperature is much lower in this one, so I do think the Chiefs and both teams will be able to throw some. But my big thing I keep coming back to is Miami runs the ball well when they stick with it. And Casey's run defense, although their defense is good, isn't great. But I just think Miami's too banged up. I mean, it sounds like Waddle might play, Mostert should play, but they're picking up, edge guys off the street, Justin Houston and anyone that can line up on the edge. I think they're a little too banged up. I'm going to take Casey at home minus the points.
Yeah, I do think it's a lot for Miami. I probably go, under. It's 43.5 points just because I'd feel more comfortable taking the under just because of the weather in this game. And I think they both are going to hit the ground pretty hard. And, Pacheco's a really, tough runner. So maybe that led to them. And, can the Chiefs just find a couple of plays? Can their wide receivers make a couple of plays in this game? That might be all it takes. But it's just the weather just is such it's such a factor of leveling and not knowing how this is going to turn out, how it's going to look, which makes me want to take the points. So I'm going to take the points with the Dolphins and the 5 points, and think this is going to be kind of a field goal game either way and potentially a close one. But the Chiefs should be favored as they are in this one.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you.
Next, the Sunday games. We got 3 of them. Steelers at Bills, Packers at Cowboys, Rams at Lions. Next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Jace Medical and the Jace Case. And I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but let's just talk for a second about preparing for real life. And according to the FDA, pharmacies are running low out of some antibiotics like amoxicillin. And maybe that's something your family needs. Potential supply chain issues could keep you from maybe potentially life-saving medication that you or your family needs. Maybe you want to be prepared for a natural disaster. We've seen pandemics. Maybe you're traveling with your family. You're not going to have cell phone service. You're going to be in a remote location. You're not going to have access to the medication you need. The Jace Case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, UTIs, respiratory infections, skin infections, among many others. And all you got to do is visit jacemedical.com. You complete your physician visit there. It'll be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jacemedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. Again, that is Jace Medical, JASE medical.com. Ooh, doggy. All right. So all AFC early and then all NFC playoff games late in the weekend. Let's go to Sunday morning, and it is your Pittsburgh Steelers, Matt, at the Buffalo Bills. Maybe not negative 30 wind chill, but weather's going to be a factor here as well.
Oh, man. So that's like maybe I think it's like a 5-hour drive from Pittsburgh to Buffalo. The team's going to fly, of course, but I know many people either within the organization or reporters or people I work, kind of shoulder to shoulder with that aren't sure they can get there. Like the roads and the weather and the snow belts between there all along Lake Erie are unbelievably bad. And a lot of them are thinking after the game, they're not going to be able to get home till like Tuesday. And it's just not that far a drive. So the weather is extreme, and more so than the Chiefs game, they're thinking like consistent 20-mile-an-hour winds and gusts up to like 45 degrees or 45 miles an hour, which like almost moves a human. This could be very much like that Mac Jones threw 3 passes game. That right. I mean, and people talk about. I've done so much homework on this game, but Buffalo Stadium strangely enough, does not cut the wind hardly at all. Because, like, if we walk in Buffalo Stadium, you're almost already on the top floor. You're like, the wind just flies right through there. It's not wind resistant at all. So I think all that helps the Steelers because they're the worst team, and I think weird things like that just narrow the playing field. And I'm sure Allen will not be content just throwing it 3 times, where the Steelers might just hand it off a million times over and over. Yeah. I still think the Bills win. No TJ Watt, although I don't know rushing the passer even matters in this game. And to be honest, I said this on the Steeler Airway yesterday. If New England were playing in this game, I might take the Patriots. You know what I mean? Just like a Belichick. I don't care that Juju and Elliott are slow anymore. They just are tough on D. Like the best team might not win this game, and that gives me some Steeler hope. So I'm going to take the points, but I have the Bills winning by about a touchdown. I just think Allen's too much to contain, no matter what the weather is.
Yeah, and if it's a low-scoring game and it's as you described, 10 points is a lot. It's a big.
It just seems like too much.
That type of a game. And if
I don't know if you can attempt kicks, like I think long snaps might go stray, crazy stuff.
Yeah. Field goals that would be good on any other day are blown right across
not even close, right?
In front of the there's always that game in Chicago. It was about a decade ago that I think of where the kicks were just like the kick goes up, whoop, gone. Not even put it in. And so if points are hard to come by, 10 points is going to be a pretty big spread, especially when the big advantage the Bills have is at quarterback, and if that's nullified by some of the wind. I'm kind of with you there that 10 points is too much. Good weather, I'll give up the points because the Bills are better than.
Yeah. If this was in a dome, I'd give you 14.
It's a goofy game. 38.5. I'd probably just go to the over under before I went to the spread, but we got to make our picks here and state it. So
last over under I saw was 34. Like this thing just keeps dropping dropping.
Sorry, I said 38.5. It's a 35.5 is what.
Okay. I didn't look at a day or two, but yeah.
And 10 points is just kind of too much, even though I think it is a Bills victory here. Give me the points with those Steelers. And man, could the Steelers do it again and keep this thing rolling?
The way this sets up, I think, is kind of helpful.
It's absolutely helpful. And look, James Cook isn't the most ground and pound running back in the world either. If
that's not Najee, right?
Right. Packers at Cowboys, 7 seed at 2 seed here. Packers, one of the hotter teams in the NFL coming into the playoffs at the Dallas Cowboys, who are favored by 7. Who you got?
I'm going to take the points. I just love how I didn't mean to do that. I love how Jordan Love is playing and that offense in general. I'm a little worried, kind of like the Texans conversation. Are they getting a little ahead of their skis? Is this the year they learn what playoff football is all about? And then next year you become a contender? Maybe. But I also give Green Bay the coaching advantage. I know Dallas at home is really, really tough. But I think 7 is just too many. I like Dallas wins by 4 or 5.
We're going to watch the Kansas City night game and then the Buffalo morning game. And then all of a sudden we're going to go to Dallas, Texas and be like, oh, wait, okay, here we go. Now we're going to see points and, over under 50.5 in this one.
Yeah.
I'm going to give up the points here. I think the Dallas Cowboys are a better football team. And the Packers, nice run, similar to the CJ Stroud Texans. Like, hey, good job, young team, young offense. You figured it out. You got into the playoffs narrowly and, regroup, and maybe the run is in you next year.
Yeah. They're trending in the right direction in a big way.
Another very hot team, maybe the only team hotter than the Packers going into the playoffs on the NFC side is the Los Angeles Rams, and they are at 3 seed Detroit Lions. Detroit favorite at home by 3.
This seems like the most likely upset to me. And, well, maybe Houston. But I'm going to go with the Rams. Definitely +3. I'm torn if I'm picking them to win or not. I really trust McVay and Stafford more than I trust Campbell and Goff. I could see I feel like I've been hard on Campbell lately, but I could see him doing something emotional, just getting a little too in the moment and fired up. I think this is going to be a dynamite game. I would not touch it in terms of bets. I don't feel strong about the Rams, even +3. The Lions offense is awesome. I think they're the more talented football team. This is just more of a hunch and a McVay Stafford thing for me.
I mean, I think Lions fans are going to be out of their minds for
Yes.
a playoff game. Jared Goff revenge game, by the way, with the Stafford Goff trade. So I love the angle here in this one. Give me the Lions by a lot. I think the Lions are going to put up points. Great run by the Rams. They might put up some points as well, but that back seven for the Rams is just not going to be able to hang, I think, with the Detroit Lions in that offense. And so I'm expecting a lot of points from the Lions. And so something like the 38-24 Lions victory.
I can see it. I mean, I absolutely could see that being the case. I mean, they're very talented. They're at home. And I do think they're well coached. Mine's more of a hunch.
There we go. That is the Saturday and Sunday games. We'll come back Monday and break it all down and then make our picks for the Monday nighter and have a better idea of what that Monday night game, Eagles at Buccaneers, means for round 2 of the NFL playoffs. And of course, we'll probably have a ton more news on coaches and GMs and hirings, and probably not any more firings, but who knows? Because there's been some stuff floated out there by Schefter and Diana Rossini that certain coaches have hit the market that teams didn't expect, and safe coaches might not be safe. So who knows? The NFL is the ultimate reality TV, and we'll be here to cover it for you after the weekend. Talk to you Monday.
Say a wild card upset could an owner could get impulsive the next day and be like, oh, shouldn't have lost that one.
The wrong one and done team in the playoffs, and we're talking about another vacant head coaching job. We'll be here for all of it Monday right here. Peacock and Williamson.